All right, what's everybody? Let's lock in for a coffee in Celtics here on a Friday morning. Celtics are back in action, kicking off the second half of the season with a beatdown of the Philadelphia 76ers. That's always a great way to start your weekend. We are going to pass the rock on this episode, hit the Celtics game from last night, as well as other news and notes from around the league. This is Friday Coffee and Celtics. You guys know the deal. Let's lock in. What up, what up, what up? Welcome into another edition of Green with Envy, a live Friday Coffee and Celtics edition, which, as you know, is sponsored by our friends over at Wood Island Media. Wood Island Media, a powerhouse production company for the past decade, specializing in celebrity, branded, and social content, based in Los Angeles, but roots in Boston. As always, this is your boy Will. We are checking in. How you doing? How you living? Joining me today, as he does each and every time, my best friend, co-host, and the coach of our podcast, the one and only Greg Manakis. Greg, the coffee's tasting a little bit better this morning after the way the Celtics started the second half of the season last night.
Yo, I heard you make your little appearance on the dime, and
shout out to our guys over the dime.
You got to wax poetic talking about the Celtics. Got to recap everything of the first half of the season. I really enjoyed your performance, man. I thought you sounded professional. I made a comment on their YouTube video. I'm not sure if you saw it.
I saw it this morning. Yeah.
Shut up. You guys could tell Will to shut up. I was like, Will, when are you going to let these guys talk? It was great. No, it was a fun
time.
I
don't get to play the other roles. Most times I'm trying to ask a question, and I still talk a lot on the show for a host, but I still usually just like to try to set something up. And so when you get to be the other guy, this is so okay. Here's a good example. This is, in our men's league where we have a lot of guys that were like ex D2, D3 players, or like, you or one of our other guys, Remy, like went to like D1 colleges, but probably could have played, D2, D3 level. I just play my role. I'm just sitting there. I'm kind of going on the outside. Like let me get the ball when I can. I'll help space the floor. But then in like our Sunday pickup where the skill level is a little bit brought down, I'm a little bit more empowered, right? Like I got a little bit more to do. And so that's kind of what this is, like the role reversal of going from host to being the person actually interviewed. So had a little bit more space to cook, and you got to let it fly sometimes.
I enjoyed it. I was like, damn, Will, like, yeah, talk your shit, man. What are your boys' names over there?
Yeah, shout out to our guys, Josh and Quab over at The Dime. You can go check them out. I hopped on their podcast earlier this week. I think it might have dropped yesterday. Good dudes over there. They cover all of the NBA. So they're Josh is a Knicks fan and Quab is a Nets fan, but they cover all aspects of the NBA. So anytime there's a big game, those guys always got something cooking. So go and give them a like, give them a follow. And we'll have them on this podcast. We're talking a little bit about that too. We'll have a little 2-on-2 with those guys at some point here for a coffee and Celtics. But yeah, no, that was fun, man. It was good. What was anything stick out to you from that interview?
I honestly was listening to it through the lens of like how many of my takes is Will gonna steal. And I thought you did a pretty good job of anytime there was something that was probably more of a my thought than a your thought, you gave me credit for it. So I appreciated that. I was just interested to see if you would steal any of my takes, and you didn't. So I appreciate it.
Hey man, you gotta cite your sources. Listen, I'm not about being greedy here. I'm not trying to steal ideas. This is the whole idea behind. I honestly don't use my @Wilbon13 anymore. Like I basically just only use @GreenMVPod. It's all about the show. This is a team effort here. So ain't trying to steal nothing. Got to make sure we cite our sources. But Greg, let's get into today's episode because I think we got a couple things that we need to hit, including last night's game. So let's cue it up here and let's get this going.
You guys ready?
It's the plan, Bobby.
We're winging it, Jerry.
Yeah! I got the rock now! I got this motherfucker now! What?
All right, you guys know what that means. That means it is a Passing the Rock Friday here on green with envy. So with that, we're going to go back and forth here, hitting different topics from last night's game, from around the league. And we're going to be able to go topic to topic here with you. So Greg, I'll start it off here for us because I do want to make sure we get in some love for last night's 124-104 beating that the Celtics put on the Sixers. And I didn't see this last night, but I did see this morning. Looks like Joel Embiid might have just tapped out on the season after last night. So Tim Bontemps has a report where Embiid's like, I got to go get my knee right. Like maybe now after last night, Embiid is finally, and the Sixers collectively are finally going to go towards that surgery option, which has always been on the table this year. And it feels like that's where they should be going. But it looks as if potentially last night's game, which I want to ask you this, Greg, was last night potentially a perfect game for the Celtics? I think this might have been the game where Embiid just tapped out on them. And so I want to know from you, do you think this was to me as close to a perfect game as the Celtics could have had? And Greg is frozen on my screen. All right. So that is a good start to Friday and C's here. So let me go through this here and try to get Greg back here, see what we can get going for y'all here. But I will start to talk here about the Celtics 124-104 game against the Sixers. So as I mentioned, I did feel like this was kind of a perfect game. Appreciate everybody joining us here in the chat. Last night, Celtics, they get out to a start, and this is an area where I think the Celtics have been really, really good, is starting the game and playing from the inside out. Greg, do we have you back? Can you hear me?
I think so. Am I here?
Okay. Yeah. I can hear you now.
Okay. Dude, so here's the issue. I have like a wireless extender upstairs, and sometimes my computer like defaults to the one downstairs, and then I have
it kind
to
of kicks between the two.
Yeah. So I apologize for that. So you were saying did the Celtics play the perfect game? That's kind of where I left off.
Yes, I rambled a bit after that, but let's go back to that because that's going to be a little bit more coherent. So yes, okay. I was saying I think the Celtics may have played a perfect game. They may have made Joel Embiid submit. Your thoughts?
In terms of like the perfect game, they were pretty damn close, right? The amount of 3-pointers that they hit. I'll just bring up this stat now. Peyton Pritchard, last night was 8 for 15 from 3. The 76ers were 8 for 39 from 3. Peyton Pritchard matched the 76ers in the amount of 3-pointers made in last night's game. And if you're the 76ers and the second half, Nick Nurse is throwing out David Roddy onto the court. He's putting Jared Butler. I didn't even know Jared Butler was still in the league. He's on the court there. They got that Doughton kid on the court there. Ricky Council IV is bricking 3-pointers. Paul George showed up, I guess, in that he did some things on the basketball court.
You know what I really enjoyed last night, Greg? So I'm not sure Reggie Miller was cognitively at the game last night because his announcing was just kind of all over the place. And at one point, the Sixers were struggling on offense, and he was like, it is just so tough for the Sixers to find offense. No Embiid, no Maxey.
Who were both on the court.
Who were both on the court. And so I tweeted this out. I was like, did I hear this correctly? They're both very clearly on the court right now. And literally there was 5 responses of he was wrong, but he was right because no one was out there for the Sixers doing anything. So I got enjoyment out of that last night.
There's just no joy for that Sixers team. And when you juxtapose that with the Celtics, who, as you said, played pretty much the perfect game last night. Tatum was, I think Tatum and Pritchard were the only guys that played over 30 minutes. Tatum played 35, Pritchard played 31, but everybody else was in the 20s. Drew Holiday last night played 20 minutes. He looked good. 20 minutes from Drew Holiday. I think that was another thing in terms of passing the rock here. Drew Holiday's burst in energy off, from the jump in that game. You could just see there was another level of Drew Holiday in that game. And when Peyton Pritchard is going off to the degree that he is, it's just very easy for Drew to, kind of do what we're doing with Al Horford and only play him when we really need him out there on the court. And if we're getting that level of Drew Holiday for 20 to 28 minutes a game, watch out NBA, because Drew had 2 full weeks off. So he hadn't played a game since February 4th. So he had February 5th through the 19th off. Yesterday was February 20th, where he played his first game since February 4th. And, I thought he looked bouncy. He was explosive. He was putting his head down, driving into traffic. He was 2 for 3 from 3. And like I said, only 20 minutes of action. And when Peyton Pritchard is, matching the 76ers in the amount of 3-pointers made in like
Yeah.
a third of the amount of attempts. That's just not a good look.
You know how we always talk about Peyton Pritchard hitting 5 threes, right? Like that's been kind of like the magic number of like, this is an amazing Pritchard game. He had 5 threes with, I think it was 8 minutes to go in the second quarter. Like that's the type of night that it was for the Celtics. And, you know, on that Drew Holiday point, I'm making a full plea petition here. Can we play him no more than 2 games per week? That's what I asked for the rest of the season. No more than 2 games per week. I don't care how it shakes out. Like, I just need that type of energy, Drew Holiday, that we got in that game last night. I need more of that. But Greg, something else that I was starting to talk about while you were while your Wi-Fi was kicked while your Wi-Fi's were passing the rock back and forth and kicked you out of the room. Something I was starting to say that really stood out to me last night that I think is part of and this won't happen every game, but part of when you envision the perfect game for the Celtics was the way that their offense went inside out. And the way that 4 out of their first 5 shots were all made at the rim. And I think about 7 out of their first 8 shots were shots at the rim. And then from that, what came immediately is just amazing look after amazing look after amazing look from 3-point line. They ended the second half of the first quarter with 7 straight threes as their made field goals. And so when I see this team play that way, it's this is everything I want. And I know that other teams, in the way that, you know, matchups dictates, that's not always going to be the case. But as far as if you could, in football, they always say that some teams come out and they have their first 15 plays drawn up, right? And then they kind of go from there. That's this version of it for the Celtics is, hey, let's get downhill, let's get aggressive, let's get to the basket. And then all of a sudden we have all this space, all these shooters that are available. And it just worked out perfectly for this team. And yeah, that was a huge part for me. And when I saw that, I knew from the jump, this is a game Celtics are locked in on. And I don't know if you heard KP talking to Abby Chin after the game, where he was like, it was really important for us to not let the momentum, because of the break that we had before it, go to. And so this was a game that they were clearly geared up for from the start.
Yeah, and I think to your point about them driving to the basket early in the game, I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that Embiid is covering Kristaps Porzingis, and he has to be away from the basket. And when you're able to draw Embiid away from the basket, and he doesn't have the mobility in order to protect both the basket and get out to the 3-point line, I think that's part of the reason why Embiid tapped out in this game and seemingly is tapped out on the season, is because they have to go through Boston, right? Like, if they can't beat Boston, there's no reason for playing the rest of the season. Yeah, what's the point? Like, Embiid needs surgery on his knee. Just get the surgery now and just like look forward to next season, see if there's a way to salvage that knee and salvage his career, honestly. And yeah, I mean, it's just really sad if you're a Sixers fan. I sit right next to a Sixers fan in the office, and they're just depressed. You know, like, even with the Eagles winning the Super Bowl, they're like, oh man, but it really does suck that the Sixers are just like garbage right now. And I think they're going to punt on the season, man. I think you'll see Paul George probably shut down relatively soon. I think Embiid, you know, but there's no reason to play him the rest of the season. Even Tyrese Maxey, who is one of the most joyful basketball players you'll ever see, looks completely defeated. And if Maxey's not playing with joy, then it's just that's
honestly probably the saddest part of the Sixer season, because to your point, Tyrese Maxey seems like the happiest dude out there just to be hooping. He just wants to hoop. And he doesn't have that same, because he's got kind of that, you know, every time we're like, he's got that Magic Johnson smile, right? Like that just like sticks out to you on the court. And yeah, you just don't see that even if you tune in, not just last night, but you tune into other games for the Sixers. Like it's just really, really tough. We got a message here from my guy Phil. The key is to get 30 plus assists for the Celtics. Yeah, it's pretty unbeatable when you're getting 30 plus assists for the Celtics. One other thing I wanted to ask you here, Greg, on this game that I think has stood out to me, not just in this game, but, you know, back to the Celtics being, I think, 10-3 in their last 13 before the break, is, for me, I have a very specific telltale sign of this team being locked in on defense. But I want to ask you first, when is it for you, or is there anything that jumps out to you when you're watching a game and you're like, okay, this is a game where the Celtics defense is locked in? Is there anything that you look for when you're watching?
I think it's just like the basic communication stuff and multiple efforts. When they're making those multiple efforts, and, you know, communicating, pre-switching. When there's a roll man coming to the basket, they're scramming out to the corner and Xing out and things like that. Like the basic NBA schemes that you see, but they're doing them with intention and they're moving at full speed and closing out to shooters and making all those multiple efforts. I think that's the same for pretty much any team in the league. But when the Celtics do it with the level of defenders that they have, it's just a different level.
Yeah, for me, and all those things obviously apply. It's how they close out on shooters. Like that's the number one thing to me that just tells me that this team, number one, that this is a big game to them, whether they give a shit for this game, and that they're going to be really, really difficult to beat. And last night, I know it was like early on in the game. I think Paul George actually hit a corner three, but I can't remember who it was closing out on it. But it was someone recovering a scram, and the way that they close out, even though we made it, I was like, all right, we're locked in on this game right now. And so when you watch the way that the Celtics challenge and don't just give up open threes, because that was something they did a lot last year, where it was even if I'm not going to get there, I'm running at you. I'm running through you as far as
And I think the play that you're referring to is actually a right wing three. Paul George took a 3-pointer and Jason Tatum closed out hard on him, and he jumped from like the elbow, and normally he would kind of just like stutter step his feet and put his hand up, but he made like a full effort to contest, and he ended up closing the gap. And to your point, Paul George hit it. But I think, that's absolutely right. The fact that they're closing out hard. Derek White is making like 7 efforts on one play, closing out the shooters.
Derek White's efforts when he's really going for it with challenging shots is almost like, oh my God, dude, like you're doing so much that it almost worries me sometimes. But yeah, Derek White really, really stands out for that. So yeah, I was just curious to know if there was anything else that stands out to you. But yeah, last night, man, just a strong effort all the way around. I don't think there's really anything that you could kind of point to. Maybe Sam Hauser going 1 of 5 was the one blemish in what seemed like almost a perfect game. Triple double for Jason Tatum. Want to shout that out there. 15 points, 11 rebounds, and 10 assists for him. And then just obviously Peyton Pritchard with 28 points, and then just efficiency across the board from everybody. Luke, man.
Can I get the rock? Can I get the rock real quick?
I don't know, man. See, this is what happens. I go on one show and then I got the
We're supposed to be passing the rock. You're taking all the stuff.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Luke Cornett was amazing last night. Like he's been amazing. Top 10 in the league. Luke Cornett. Let me just read this to you. In the entire league, these are the categories that Luke Cornett is in the top 10. Offensive rebound percentage, defensive rating, net rating, assist to turnover ratio, contested twos per 36 minutes, contested shots per 36 minutes, pick and roll man efficiency of players who have played at least 45 games, effective field goal percentage, and true shooting percentage. Luke Cornett is in the top 10 in all of those categories. In the last 7 games in February, Luke Cornett is averaging 19 minutes per game. That's the most of any month this season. His offensive rating, in February in 7 games is 131.5. His assist to turnover ratio is 8-1. His effective field goal percentage is 77%, and he's averaging 3 offensive rebounds per game. And Luke Cornett is catching bodies. Luke Cornett is catching bodies in games, going hard off the roll. And the one question I have in my head is, what if Luke Cornett rediscovered his 3-point shot? he would be like a legit starting center in the NBA if Luke Cornett rediscovered his 3-point shot.
Yeah, we got to enjoy this Luke season, man. He's playing himself right out of Boston. Like it's sad to say, but he's been so good. I mean, I don't know, what'd you name 10 statistics right there that he's crushing it in. Like this has been an unreal run for Luke Cornett. And it's good to see on some of these national TV games that he's getting a little bit of love, right? That he's getting some of that shine.
Did you hear Shaq call him Baby McHale?
Right. I was trying to think of what it was. I knew he referenced him to Kevin McHale. Yeah, Baby McHale. I think we got to add that, to get someone to add that to Basketball Reference. Baby McHale is a great nickname for Luke. And honestly, Luke and Shaq, that'd be a fun interview. I feel like Luke would have a good time with a Shaq interview. I would like to see the two of them have a conversation. But yeah, Luke was special, man. Those dunks coming down the lane where he's throwing it down with authority. That is
put Luke Cornett in the 1990s and put him in the Chicago Bulls triangle offense. Let's go.
Dude, Luke Cornett in the 90s might have made a couple All-Star games. Let's just be real.
It's possible.
It's a possibility. It's a possibility. But yeah, Luke was unbelievable last night in his performance here. It's funny, only 6 points, but it felt like so much more because those dunks just really stood out to you. But then did fill the stat sheet: 7 rebounds, 4 assists, a steal, 2 blocks, and is just his IQ is just so top level that between him, Horford, and KP, and it's been a big emphasis with that double big look. It's really been working for this team here over their last 14, 15 games or so. So definitely something to keep an eye on here. Greg, should we start passing the rock outside of the Celtics game last night? Or do you have anything else on this game?
Just one more thing on Tatum.
Yeah.
The continued development as a playmaker. He's averaging 11.5 potential assists per game this season. If you had to guess, because he had 11 assists last night, how many potential assists did Tatum have?
Potential assists last night. I can already think of a couple that I know that didn't work out. I'm going to say he had 17 potential assists last night.
On the dot, baby. 17 potential assists from Jason Tatum last night. Over his last 15 games, he's averaging 12.5 potential assists per game, and over his last 10, 13.4. So that continued playmaking and the joy that he's getting out of setting up his teammates. Some of those pick and roll cross court passes where you think he's hitting the roll man and that thing just zips right over the roll man into the weak side corner or weak side wing. Like those passes are Luka, LeBron level special.
Yeah. And I was thinking last night, I mean, it's crazy to think of. He dominated the game in which he scored 15 points and was the 5th leading scorer on the team.
When he took a shot, it was almost like he was like, I have to shoot one of these. I can't just keep passing. I have to shoot it at some point.
Right. There was one play where I remember he shot a 3 and he was just like, I gotta do it. Like, I mean, because I think at one point he was like, I gotta at least, I can't not get a triple double because I didn't score 10 points. Like, I have to score the points to get this,
Yeah. At one point I was like, okay, Tatum knows he has the triple double. Now he's like, can I get a 20-point triple double instead of just 15 points? Can I get up to 30? Can I go on a Tatum scoring binge right here and get to 30?
Right. But to your point of his playmaking, it's just crazy to watch him dominate a game with his rebounding and passing and scoring be, just in the background. Like,
what was your favorite Tatum pass last night?
Favorite Tatum pass last night?
There was a lot of them.
There was a lot of them. I'd have to go back and kind of watch through all of them. I'm thinking of basically one of the passes that you described, which I think ended up to Horford on the wing, if I'm remembering correctly. Yeah. That's one, but I know that there was a couple others that I think I'm missing here. Obviously, I think he hit Luke on both of his dunks that he had kind of coming through the lane. But those were some ones that stood out. Did you have one in particular that you were thinking of?
I mean, he's so good when he's going to his right hand in a pick and roll situation with Horford or Porzingis that pops to the top. And he was full speed, driving to his right hand, drawing 2 people in rhythm, throws that behind the back bounce pass that hits KP on time, on target for the 3. And he kind of looked over at the scorer's table like, if I'm doing that, like, is there a difference between me and Luka Doncic in our playmaking? Like, honestly, especially the Lakers, Luka.
Yeah, Lakers Luka's not look great. Not look great. That move for this season, which is what I said, is going to be a step back. So we'll see what happens out in Lakerland. All right. I'm going to pass the rock to myself now. I'm going to take the rock back here. And let's go to the biggest news that shocked the NBA world yesterday and directly affects us for our weekend plans tonight. Victor Wembanyama out for the rest of the season with I'm gonna try and pronounce this, Greg. Deep vein thrombosis in his right shoulder, essentially a form of a blood clot in the right shoulder. Apparently, it's the same thing that really basically ended Chris Bosh's career earlier.
I believe that was in his lungs, though.
Right. I think a different location, but the same type of blood clot, I guess. Yeah. Brandon Ingram also had one of these, I think, a couple of years ago. Missed the last like 30-ish games of the
that was also
the season.
Right shoulder.
Yeah, so something that I think can be controlled, but I get big man, a lot of flights. I guess that's just kind of things that are potentials to happen. And for Wemby, and man, even for the league, coming off of a really shitty All-Star weekend for the league, especially, and we'll talk maybe a little bit later, juxtaposing with, I didn't realize what this whole 4 Nations hockey thing was. I didn't realize that was just supplementing what they do for their All-Star break. So we'll talk about that in a minute. But as successful as that was compared to what the NBA rolled out, and now your brightest, youngest phenom gets this diagnosis right off of it. They're in Austin. Greg and I going to the game tonight, Spurs and Pistons, still will be a good time. Get to see Cade, get to see Fox, get to see a couple of young guys, Asar Thompson, Castle. Like, it will still be a good time, but definitely the shine of not having Wemby, that hurts a bit here. But just the tough news for NBA fans, right? Like, it just sucks not having Wemby for the rest of the season, especially where him and Fox got, I think, 4 or 5 games together before the break. And it was going to be fun, see if they could make a run to get into that play-in, and then see if we can get some Wemby and Fox highlights in any type of a playoff format this season. Clearly not going to be the case, but does potentially open the door for, maybe falling in the standings a little bit and getting Cooper Flag to San Antonio.
Yeah, poop for Coop. Yep. SAG for flag, all those things that are out there. I think it's very disappointing for us, especially going to the game tonight. It's disappointing
rough
for
timing.
The world. Yeah, very rough timing. Disappointing for the world of basketball. It's disappointing for our belief in the basketball gods, honestly, man. Like, top 3 picks. I made a list, Will. Top 3 picks with injuries/issues over the last 20 years. 2023. Victor Wembanyama, Brandon Miller, who's also out for the remainder of the season. 2022, Chet Holmgren misses his rookie season. 2021, Cade Cunningham misses, I think, his second year in the league, or second or third year in the league. 2020, James Wiseman, where you at, my guy? LaMelo Ball, constantly injured. Oh, shout out to LeVar Ball, by the way. I know we kind of give him a lot of crap. He got his foot amputated. Feel bad for the guy. 2019, Zion Williamson obviously has not been able to stay healthy. John Morant, with all the issues he has, and he's not really playing well this season. 2018, not many great players, but they're okay. 2017, Markelle Fultz, Lonzo Ball. 2016, Ben Simmons, Brandon Ingram. 2014, Joel Embiid. 2010, John Wall. 2009, Blake Griffin. Remember, Blake Griffin actually missed his rookie season.
Yeah, he missed his rookie year. Yeah.
2008, Derrick Rose. Didn't get the best of Derrick Rose. 2007, Greg Oden. We never got to see the best of Greg Oden. Those are all top 3 picks over the last 20 years or so that have had issues, that have missed significant time. And, Wemby coming in with so many question marks, just in terms of will he be able to stay healthy, being 7'5"? The foot issues are always a concern. You don't really think about like a blood clot or a heart issue. Those are obviously still concerns that can happen to these large human beings. But to see that happen right after the Fox trade, when you hope that the Spurs might be able to, catch some momentum, catch some fire, and end up in the play-in and make the play-in extra fun, it just really stinks. It would be good, hopefully, honestly, I would love for them to be graced by the basketball gods, restore our belief in the basketball gods, and get a top 3 pick in this year's draft. I think that would be really fun.
Yeah, get them, even if it's not Cooper Flag, one of the kids from Rutgers. And I haven't done a ton of, but I know this is supposed to be a pretty deep draft. So get them one of those like top 3, 4, 5 picks. Yeah, it just sucks. And it's kind of crazy to hear that list, Greg, of all those guys that were top 3 picks. And a lot of that just feels like it just leads to, unfulfilled potential, right? Especially with even some of the guys that we've gotten the glimpses of, like Zion jumps out to me. Embiid's won an MVP, but our friend Mark was texting us last night, like the list of like true Hall of Fame guys that have never made the conference finals, like just the conference finals. It's a very low list of like, it's Dominique Wilkins. It was kind of T-Mac. I think T-Mac like as well. He might have been on one of those Spurs teams, but just like tagging along at the end of the bench.
I think he won a title with the Spurs at the end.
Yeah, but it's one of those things where like it barely counts. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
But it's a small list, right? And Embiid's, because of injuries, is probably going to end up potentially, or not. I won't say probably. There's still there's still time, but
maybe
he's on track to be. Yeah, right. We don't know. He's on track for that. And then just the other guys you list, Derrick Rose, who we know that story. As soon as you brought this list up, Greg Oden is a guy that always sticks out to me. I think Greg Oden was going to be so special. Like I even think about his college season. Greg, he had a talented team. Like Mike Conley was on his team. They had another guy, Daquan Cook, that played in the league for a little bit. But they went up against like the Al Horford, Joakim Noah, Corey Brewer Gators in the championship. Greg Oden played that entire season with his wrong hand and was the number 1 pick. Like, right. That's insane. He played with the wrong hand for the entire season and still got his team to a national championship against a team that had 3 NBA players on it, 2 of which were top 5 picks that were playing against him that were the centers that were guarding him, and he was playing with his wrong hand. And yeah, that just robbed of it, man. And it really sucks. It really sucks. So yeah, hopefully this is a minor setback for the league and Wemby. And it just sucks that we're not going to get to see Wemby again until what, October of next year. It's February right now. We're not going to see him until October. But that sucks. That really, really sucks. All right, Greg, passing the rock to you. What do you got?
I mean, I was going to talk about our experience at the Bill Simmons podcast. I don't know if you wanted to go there right now.
It's on my list of things I was going to hit. So yeah, go for it.
Okay, so for those of you that are listening, you know that we have pretty good relationship with people over at The Ringer. Like we have Michael Pina on all the time. We're talking with Brian Barrett from the Off the Pike show to come on soon. We've had Howard Beck on. We've had Cerruti comes on all the time. Anybody else from The Ringer that we've had on? We had Sharks back in the day. RIP Sharks.
Yeah. I think that's it. I think maybe there's someone else, but yeah, that's for the most part. That's been the list.
Right. So and Bill Simmons, obviously, you know, being Boston kids, huge influence on our lives and our want to kind of enter into the sports media space. And we got a chance to go to the Bill Simmons live podcast that he actually just added to his feed yesterday, where he brought out Chris Ryan, Sean Fennessy, and Shea Serrano, where they did this hilarious draft. And they even called it out there. Like, this is kind of the worst thing to do at a live podcast taping, but we're going to do a classic Ringer draft of basketball players fictional basketball players from movies. But they had like 7 players that they were drafting, and they also drafted an owner, a GM, a head coach, and an assistant coach. It was just like a long.
But wait, the caveat was all of the coaches and GMs and owners had to be from heist movies,
right? Yeah,
which was the other wrinkle. So it got confusing to follow. Like if you're confused in Greg's explanation, which actually he did a great job of explaining it, it was confusing.
Chris Ryan had no idea what was going on the entire time. It was pretty funny. Like the crowd kept kind of heckling him a little bit. But in terms of takeaways from that experience, live podcasting, you know, if we're not doing in or out, I don't know if I'm in or out on the live podcasting experience. Will, what was your kind of feeling leaving that show? Did you enjoy being there for 2 hours listening to that podcast, or would you have preferred to just catch it on the audio feed?
I enjoyed being there. I like the live experience. I mean, I think in general, we're like, there's less and less stuff that we're in person for. And this might be a personal thing because I barely leave the house because I work remote and do this, even though we're in the same city, we do this remote. Like I like the feeling of having an event to go to. Would I do that on a consistent basis? Probably not. But I think like once in a while, I think, you know, out of there's probably 5 or 6 podcasts that I consistently are in my rotation. There's a few fringe ones, but like once a year, if I were to go to a taping of each podcast, I think that'd be cool. I wouldn't want to go to like, hey, every week I'm going to the Simmons taping. Like, I don't think like that would get old very, very fast to be able to do something like that. But I think if, you know, out of like my favorite shows, I were to go to like each of them once a year, like I would definitely do that if it was, you know, within my power to do it. So I just think there's a little bit of a different energy that comes through when you're there. And we discuss afterwards, like, we're not the guys that are going to be, I'm not yelling at a podcast. I'm sorry. I'm just not going to be that guy. There's guys that I will be. That's a guy I won't be. I won't be the guy yelling out at a podcast. But it is nice to have that crowd atmosphere. It's the same reason why live sports is still something that even without Wemby, I'm looking forward to the game tonight that we're going to go see. Yeah. Like, it's still that environment that you just don't get all the time unless you're like a season ticket holder and stuff like that. So I enjoyed it, and I enjoy, you know, we were talking a little bit about this after the show, and you texted me this morning, like, it's kind of cool seeing how, you know, how it all gets made, like watching Simmons kind of orchestrate, and at times it feels very tuned in, like he's just got this locked in. Other times it felt very just kind of random, but I think that's part of the feel that he has for this, right? And so it is interesting to watch. And then it's, you know, I think that was the second time I had seen Simmons live. I think we talked about, there was a South by show like 6-7 years ago, probably, where I'd watched him interview Bill Hader while he was promoting Barry. And I don't necessarily remember like watching too much of the technique at that point. It was way before we were doing this. So I think this time I was a little bit more kind of locked in on like, how is he structuring this right now? You know, especially thinking if we ever were to be able to find the avenue that made sense for us to do a live show, like what format works. Cause I think that's a big part of it. is trying to figure out how the live format is different than this version of a podcast, because they are two different things, in my opinion.
I also wanted to kind of just throw this out there to the audience, but also to you, because we haven't necessarily talked it through. You just mentioned how you don't want to be the guy at a podcast that's shouting things out as people are taping a podcast live. Like, that's part of it. Like, clearly they were.
No, I think
the
people
guy,
should be doing it. I don't want to
Yeah.
be that guy, but I like that other people are doing
Yeah,
it.
and they were
just
funny.
wanna
Like,
do
I thought the timing of the crowd was great and the way that the
Yeah.
guys on stage played off of it. But then after the show, we got to kick it with Cerruti for a little bit, chop it up with him. And we got to meet Nephew Kyle for the first time. For those of you that
Shout out to Nephew Kyle.
yeah, listen to the Russillo podcast. He didn't disappoint. He was absolutely hilarious. But there was one point we were talking with him as he was like ripping cigarettes outside. And, you know, we were talking about the podcast and everything like that. And his Uber comes. So he's going to get in his Uber. And this one guy, probably, I don't know, late 40s, early 50s, yells out like, "Oh, Nephew Kyle, can I get a picture?" And he's like, "Really, man? Like, I'm getting into my car right now. Like, I guess I'll take a picture with you, but I'm getting in my car right now." And one thing I was kind of proud of us was that we didn't prioritize the photo op with those people.
Yeah.
We prioritized the relationship building, right? And that's kind of who I want to be more than like the photo op guy. I don't mind taking a photo with people, but like I'd prefer just to be the relationship people versus like,
Right.
oh, I'm doing this for the gram. So I was proud of us for that. What was your takeaway on that?
Yeah, no, I went into it with like, unless there was a explicit reason for it, other than us just being like, "Hey, let's get a photo." You know what I mean? Like, unless there was, I don't know what that reason would be. It would have to be something natural, which is why I couldn't predict what that reason would be. That I didn't want to do that, right? And like, unless for some reason Rudy was like, "Yeah, we should get a photo," like, you know, then it would be like, "All right, sure, why not?" But yeah, no, I think we're on the same page, and I mean, once again, this is why we're best friends. We're linked up here. We've got the same flow.
And then at the end of the night, just to kind of put a bow on this, you know, me and Will, obviously we want to meet Simmons. I had texted Cerruti. I was like, "I know it's probably not likely, dude, but if we could meet Simmons, that would be great." And he was like, "Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know. Like, probably not, but you know, if the opportunity arises." So we're sitting there, we're drinking after the show. We had let the guys know we were going to this place called the Driscoll. And we saw Nephew Kyle, and we were like, "Oh, Kyle, what's up, man? How you doing? Like, do you want to join us?" And he was like, "Oh, actually, I'm with a group." And he was like, clearly didn't remember us from 5 minutes earlier when we were talking to him. But then he was like, "Oh, wait a minute, I was just talking to you guys, the Celtics podcast." He was like, "Yeah, we're actually over there." So I was like, "Oh, tell Cerruti we're over there." And we're talking, we're like, how do we approach this situation? Like, we sort of have an invitation to go over, but we don't really. They were all sitting around a table. It wasn't like they were just standing by the bar. So we were deliberating, like, do we go up and just like say what's up? And what we ended up doing was just leaving, right? But as we left, we just said bye to Cerruti and kind of kept it real chill. It was the right move. I feel good about it, but there was part of me where like, Kyle, as we're leaving, like just as we turn our backs, he looks at us and he goes, "Oh, the Celtics podcast." Right. And in my head, I was like, damn, like that's a moment where if we had just been like a little bit more patient and maybe we're just like, "Hey, good show, guys, like big fans, whatever. Like, Kyle, good to meet you." What, you know, the stuff like that. If we had just hung on for like half a second longer, maybe there was an opportunity for us to actually chop it up with Simmons because he was right next to Cerruti. But I agree with you. I feel good about it.
That as well. I thought about that too. It's like, what are you going to do though? It's like, after we were like, we executed the plan that we talked about. You didn't want to be the guy who was like, "Oh, wait a minute. Hey, do you want to?" Yeah. Bill, did you hear what your nephew said?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like it just looked bad. And so, and you know, it would have been cool to see how that played out. But overall, you know, like I think we got to go by, say our thing, and it was a good night. I was happy.
Great night.
Okay, on that, let's pass the rock back to me here. I want to stick with this. So you mentioned how that draft was laid out. We've had a few days here since the recording. And so I wrote down a couple of guys that I think were missed from that draft. Do you have anyone else that has stood out to you? Since you asked me as we were going to the bathroom afterwards, and I like wasn't quite fully prepared to have too many names. I know there was one movie we mentioned, but for those that haven't listened, I would recommend go to Bill Simmons' feed, listen to the list. Shea Serrano steals the show. If any of you have anyone that's on his team in your mind right now, I will be shocked. He really goes off the grid to go ahead and put his team together. But Greg, was there anyone that stood out to you that was maybe overlooked that maybe on our little podcast here can get some shine?
I mean, everybody from Coach Carter, right? I don't think
I just have Coach Carter underrepresented is what I have in my notes.
severely underrepresented in that. Like Junior Battle, the fact that he
Junior
goes
Battle.
head to head with Ty Crane in that movie and is able to, like, you know, from the beginning of the season to the end of the season, have that growth where Ty Crane looks at him at the end. He's like, "You're the truth, man. You're the truth. Like, you're the real deal." And then Ty Crane,
Sharpshooter, Timo
Yeah.
Cruz.
Timo Cruz
didn't
got to
get
be on
picked.
there. My guy
I don't know what
Worm.
Channing Tatum's name is, but he got left off. So did
Yeah,
the
my
point
guy
guard.
Worm.
Well, okay, yeah, this is Worm. Well, Worm was like the starting point guard, and then the coach's son that was like the ninth grader.
Oh, yeah.
He was the kid
Damian
on Cousin
Carter.
Skeeter. That's the only thing I know him from is Cousin Skeeter back in the day.
Yeah, I think it's Damian Carter is his name in the movie.
Yeah, Damien. Yeah, okay, I can picture him saying it. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think, you know, they weren't allowed to draft from Space Jam, so obviously you can't do MJ. They mentioned it on the show, but the kid from Finding Forrester, like the fact that he can make 1,000 free throws in a row and he's like a prep school god, I think he definitely is one of those missed opportunities there.
Yeah. Okay. I got a couple that I'll rip through here that I thought were missed. I was a little surprised that this probably would have had to come from. Actually, you know what? All these guys like kind of independent movie or like indie films. Boogie got no love.
Okay,
Boogie was a great movie, man. I enjoyed that. We could have had a ball handler there with Boogie, so I thought that was one guy that was missed. I've got Common from the movie Just Right. Don't know what his name was. Something Right. I don't know if it was Antoine Wright or whatever it was. That was a missed opportunity. Zac Efron, High School Musical. That dude was hooping in that movie. That's an opportunity right there. And he can sing. Good looking dude. It's pretty good to have on your team. They did draft Bo Cruz from Hustle. But so I thought at that time that was going to open the door. How do you not pick Kermit Washington from that movie, aka Anthony Edwards?
Right.
Like if you want a real villain on your team that's going to stir some shit up, like I feel like that's an avenue you got to go. So once, because it was a little confusing about the rules of actual basketball players being that were like
they just couldn't be playing themselves.
Right, I guess that was the rule. So his name was Kermit Washington in that movie. So there's the opening for you right there. So I was a little surprised that once Bo Cruz got taken, that door.
Well, they clearly hadn't put much thought into it.
That's true. They mostly had scraps of paper.
Yeah, they were building
Simmons
the plane.
Had full
they were building the
plane
plane as they were flying it for sure.
Yeah. And then the last one I have on here was Marlon Wayans in the movie Sixth Man. Did you ever see that movie back in the day?
Yeah. That's the one where is it? Wait, hold on. Is that the one where the brother dies?
Yeah, it's his brother dies like in the opening scene or like dunking a basketball, has like a heart attack on the rim, and then he comes back as like a ghost to help him. Like,
I think I had that poster in my room because it was like it was like the ghost was like holding on to the brother.
Exactly.
Yeah, I definitely had that poster in my room.
Yeah, so that was another movie that I thought was missed out on, but overall fun time. Really enjoyable podcast. I definitely recommend you guys listen to this. Greg, you got anything else here for Passing the Rock?
I got nothing.
Okay, I got one thing, and I alluded to it earlier, so I just wanted to bring it in here, and then we can wrap this up here. So last night, I don't know if you watched it. Everyone's been kind of talking about, but they did the Four Nations hockey thing, which I'll be honest, I didn't really know what it was or why it was happening. We're not really locked into the hockey scene around here. But I did see it starting to get some buzz maybe over the weekend or whenever it started. So essentially it's USA, Canada, Sweden, and Finland that were having this round robin tournament. And I didn't know if this was like FIBA, but for hockey or something. I didn't really understand like what was happening. So I looked it up because last night I did catch after the Celtics game, I caught the end of the third period and a little bit of overtime, which was in Boston. Canada beats the USA 3-2. Pretty electric. And listen, I've said this before, you know, like hockey in person is one of the best sports to watch in person. I think basketball is probably the best middle ground of good in person and solid on TV. I think hockey's a little bit tough on TV unless you really know what's going on. Otherwise, I'm just like, there's a bunch of shit flying around. I don't know. Like I can't even see the puck, right? Like I can't follow it. So it's just, I wait for the reaction. But because of the, you know, basically once it gets to overtime, it's very tense. Like there's nothing better than that. It's like a constant game 7 on every single play. Like what is going to happen? This could end the game right here. Ultimately, Canada wins 3-2 in overtime. But I didn't realize that this was just supplementing what the NHL was doing for their All-Star break, was having this tournament. And so I saw some comments going around last night, a little bit this morning before we hopped on, of people being like, man, NBA could really like learn a lesson here, especially as that Court of Gold documentary is out on Netflix. I'm about halfway through that. Have you started watching that yet, Greg?
I haven't. I wanted to actually like as homework assignments for you and I so that we could talk about it on the pod. I would love to both of us watch that and kind of go through it. And I also want to do like the White Lotus thing because neither of us have watched episode 1 of season 3 of White Lotus. So I'd like to also check in on some TV shows together. I think that'd be fun.
We can add that. So yeah, I've started that and it is good. And it's following USA, it's following France, it's following Serbia, and it's following Canada. So kind of similar 4 nations. There's kind of a concept building here. And everyone loves to bring up the USA versus the world format for All-Star weekend. As I said the other day, I don't think it works because you run out of All-Stars pretty quickly from these international teams unless everyone is 100% healthy. Like you don't have the reserves like you do for USA. USA still has depth, even if the top end talent now leans a little bit more international as far as the top 5-6 guys go. So 4 nations hockey, I don't really think it's an option for basketball for multiple reasons, but was curious, do you think a format like this, Greg, where you get 4, and I don't even know what 4 countries it would be, maybe it's the 4 from the Court of Gold documentary, but do you think there is a world in which something like this, the way that it seems to have struck a chord with hockey fans and non-hockey fans alike for this format, do you think there's a world in which something similar to this could exist in basketball?
Canada, United States, Europe, Africa.
Okay, so a little twist on that. Okay, I kind of like that.
I think that could work because you get all of the like the Serbian guys and the Latvian guys, Lithuanian guys all together. I think that would be enough talent to compete against the USA. There's enough Canadian talent out there that you can definitely throw a team together. You could even do like the United States sandwich. So you could go Canada and Mexico / South America together, banding up again with all the shit that Donald Trump's talking these days, invading Canada and taking over Mexico. Like maybe they band together and form their own team. I think that could also be cool.
Yeah, I think that's actually a great approach to it to make this something that could work, right? Because I was thinking about it from the perspective of just taking like Serbia. I'm like, I mean, there's like 2 Serbian guys in the NBA. It's Bogdanovic and Jokic. All the other guys play like EuroLeague somewhere. Like, I don't know what their season's like. Their team's not just gonna be like, oh yes, let's go help the NBA and let them just take our best players for a week to go play a round robin tournament. Like that's gonna be really tough. But to your point, if you make it Africa, Europe, and then some form of Canada, Mexico, South America, whatever, then you're looking at something that could be interesting. Because then what you could do is have the regular honors of here's your 12 East All-Stars, here's your 12 West All-Stars, but doesn't mean they have to be on the teams. Maybe if you're elected a starter, you have to be selected to the team. Other than that, it's like you can make like a real team of just dudes that have to be from the US or have to be from Europe, whatever.
Yeah.
And then that gets interesting. And then it just becomes a question of would the players take that to heart the way that they did in the Olympics and the way that these hockey dudes took this tournament? Like they took it very, very seriously. Right. And I don't know that the NBA players would, but I hope they would.
Think about how good that Europe team would be. You get Wemby on that team. Wemby and Jokic is your starting front court there. You got Luka.
Giannis at your power forward.
Yeah, I mean, Giannis could probably also be on the African team, though, if he wanted to.
That's true. We could figure that out. But yeah,
I think he would probably need to be for that African team to have a chance.
To have like a real, yeah.
I think
have him, Siakam, and Embiid's U.S. citizen too, so I don't know. Embiid has again multiple options, but
I think you would need to like ask guys to play for certain parts of the world there. But I think you also get, let's see, you get Franz on that team, you get Schroeder on that team, Luka's obviously on that team.
Bogdanovic would be on that team.
The Bogdanoviches could be on that team. KP. I mean that's KP. Yeah, dude, that team would be sick.
Right, like that would be a really fun tournament to take a look. And there's a lot of younger guys that were Ricochet and Sar and stuff. There's a lot of younger guys that are coming up as well too, that could potentially be in there. So there's a lot of guys that we haven't even covered yet that would be potentially on that team as well. I think technically OG Anunoby is from Great Britain, or is from England, so he could be on that team as well. Like, right, like that's you're kind of loading up right there. So that is an idea where I think if you twist it, Now you're intriguing me a little bit more. And then I think it ultimately would just come down to, would the players care about it the same way the hockey dudes seem to care about this tournament? And you know, there's always been this divide of like, hockey guys care about literally everything, and they also don't make as much money as NBA players do. So I don't know, but I think that would be the one way that potentially this would be interesting, because I was pretty thrown off by how much people really got into this whole tournament that they did, and like the country pride came out, and I was like, it was all over my Twitter feed, and I was like, why is everyone tweeting about this game? Like, what is the significance of it? And it wasn't until last night at the end of the third period in overtime that I even tuned in, but it captivated people. So it is an idea, and there would have to be some tweaks, but potentially you've given me hope that there is potential for the NBA. Greg, just looking ahead here quickly for the weekend for the Celtics, they've got a big matchup this weekend against the New York Knicks. On your birthday, actually, a matinee special for your birthday. They did it specifically for your birthday, by the way.
heard.
So it's really nice of them to do that.
Little
Little matinee special against the Knicks at 1 p.m., 12 p.m. Central Time. And then the rest of the week looks like Toronto on Tuesday, followed by Detroit Wednesday. So a little advanced scouting we'll do tonight with the Spurs and the Pistons when we go. And then another big game Friday night at home against the Cleveland Cavaliers. Greg, any quick thoughts looking at that Knicks game coming up here on Sunday night before we sign off?
Well, the Knicks have a couple injuries right now. OG's out. I know Josh Hart missed the last game. Mitch should be back. I don't know if he played in last night's game, but he
didn't play last night, but he's getting close to being back. Yeah.
Yeah. So they had Deuce McBride and Precious in the starting lineup last night, and Deuce actually had a pretty good game. So maybe the Knicks find something there, you know, with a little bit more shooting, because Deuce is still a really good defender, and he has a little bit more of an outside threat than Josh Hart. So maybe they actually realize that Josh Hart needs to come off the bench, and maybe that like adds a little bit more depth to that team. That could make them a little bit more interesting. But my question to you is, are you ready for your first babysitting venture on Sunday?
We ready, baby. Let's go.
All right. It's happening.
My guy James. Can't wait.
It's happening. Danielle, I think she's planning like for us to go to a movie or something like that. So what time does Lorena get back? Anytime.
We'll talk about that off air. We don't need to bother people with our personal plans here to wrap this up. But we'll
I mean,
chat
the whole
here.
thing, everything about the pod is personal. Yeah, I just figured, you know, maybe, you know, we go to a movie. I'm wondering, how do you feel about your first opportunity to be a babysitter?
I feel fine. I mean, if I was by myself, I think it'd be a little bit more worrisome. I don't even think you guys would probably do that. So, I mean, I think the fact that right, yeah, exactly. So there'll be two of us. We'll be good. Yeah, I'm excited to get to spend some time with my guy James. So, looking forward to it. We'll let you know how that goes when we tune back in. We'll have another episode for you either Sunday or Monday. We'll see what that recording schedule looks like depending on plans. And yeah, we will be back with more as the second half of the season. It's here. Let's lock in, guys. This is the road here to get back to the NBA Finals. We've got a week left in February. We've got the month of March, and then about 2 weeks in April. And then, bam, we're right back in the mix of it here with the playoffs for the Boston Celtics starting the week of April 20th. So a couple of weeks here left. We'll try to lock in here, see where the Celtics fall in the standings, and get everything set for the playoffs. That's going to do it for this episode here of Coffee and Celtics. Greg, appreciate you as always, my guy. Signing off, and we will talk to you guys later. Peace.